List season, that time of year when we reflect on our year past and remind yet again time's running at a rapid rate and we're all gonna die soon. So what better way to celebrate than by counting down the top feel-good hits of the summer. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spin Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite hit songs of 2014. You know, it's funny that my KDB review from a while ago was framed entirely around how bad the US singles charts were at the time, since in retrospect 2014 has been a better year for pop music than I remember. Maybe it's due to some of the stronger singles peaking in the back half of the year, maybe it's the fact that 2013 was definitely a hard act to follow up, but to me, it's more that there wasn't so much a lack of good songs as there were more bad songs. See, to me, a lot of the worst hits of the last couple of years were really more boring than anything else, whereas now it seems like a lot of the bad trends of the 2000s that I thought we'd ridded culture of for good are now coming back in some form. But again, when I looked at the year-end Billboard Hot 100 chart last week, I was surprised to see that there are as many good and even great songs on it as there are. So, first of all, let's go through the honorable mentions. First up is Drunk on a Plane by Dierks Bentley. Now, I didn't devote a full video to his new album Riser that came out earlier this year, but it was still a pretty good album all things considered. It's the kind of accessible country album with a lot of substance and good songwriting that can really challenge people's conceptions of modern country music. That being said, this is definitely not the song to do that, at least for those looking at it more surface level. Still, it's got a charmingly dumb sense of humor, and if you listen to the lyrics, it's almost flipping the bro country cliches on their head, with how he's just using this impromptu sky-high party as a way of masking his sadness about a breakup. That being said, though, this wasn't really one of my favorite songs off Riser, and the Like a G6 reference alone is enough to knock it off the list. Next is Sing by Ed Sheeran. Now, if you've seen my review of his new album Multiply, then you know that me and John from AR TV tend to differ on opinions on this song, but I admit I have leaned more towards his thoughts on this over the months. I like the production from Pharrell that's got a much poppier side, and Ed's attempt at lighter subject matter, but there's still a cringeworthy line here and there, and it's pretty obvious the chorus was just put in there for radio airplay and just kind of took me out of it a bit. Next up is Habits Stay High by Tove Lo. Now, I definitely get where the appeal of this song lies, and as a fan of Lorde, all the musical and vocal stuff about it are right up my alley, but the lyrics, despite the emotionally powerful message, do come off a little too on the nose for my personal taste, in a way that, as much as I hate to say it, almost makes me take the song less seriously. Of course, I have to mention Let It Go, given my Frozen review has more views than my 2nd through 6th most watched videos combined. But like Frozen, I like this song, but just the overexposure of everything Frozen in pop culture has just ruined this song for me, honestly. Then we got The Monster by Eminem, a song that I'm incredibly conflicted on. Eminem himself, despite a corny punchline here and there, does deliver another solid track about dealing with his fame and notoriety. But just the sterile pop beat and the Rihanna chorus just kill it for me altogether, honestly. Nico and Vince's Am I Wrong is a nice little indie pop tune, even if it never exactly blew me away, and I could say the same thing about Sam Smith's Stay With Me in terms of slow pop ballads. And finally, Happy by Pharrell. Look, I don't like the argument most of the time that a song being overplayed automatically makes it worse, but it just got so bad for this song in like basically the entire first half of this year that I can't help it. Still a generally good pop song though, despite how standard it is. Also, I gotta mention 2013 holdovers like Royals, Radioactive, Hold On We're Going Home, and Save the Night. So without further ado, let's dive right into this list, starting with number 10, Chandelier by Sia, a singer and songwriter who, after over 15 years of critical acclaim and regrettable David Guetta features, finally has her own bona fide smash hit. This song to me has a similar interesting thing about it that Kendrick Lamar's Swimming Pools did really well when that landed on last year's chart. It's an anti-drinking song disguised as a drinking song. In this case, it's from the point of view of a girl caught up in and feeling trapped in that hard partying lifestyle, which is helped by Sia's kind of slurred delivery in the verses. But then when it explodes in the chorus, it helps make the song more anthemic and admittedly more fun. while amping up both sides of the emotion of the song, and again, the powerful vocals are a big part of that. Number 9 is Sweater Weather by The Neighborhood, and yes, this was on this year's list, but not last year's, so shut up, it counts. Anyway, I'm admittedly not head over heels for their album I Love You, but songs like this really capture what I do like about The Neighborhood, namely that spacious, reverb-heavy production that actually manages to have a good song lying underneath all of it, and those sparse guitar leads that add a really cool feel to the whole thing. Now would probably be a good time to sum up my thoughts on Black and White, the hip-hop collabs mixtape they dropped recently, and it's okay. Honestly, I expected better from it, given those faster vocal rhythms are part of what made Sweater Weather one of their more interesting songs in my opinion. But despite some cool songs here and there and some good verses from the likes of Danny Brown and Casey Veggies, if anything it just amped up a lot of The Neighborhood's flaws, especially lyrically. Getting back on track, number 8 is Pompeii by Bastille. Now, I've been debating in my head what exactly this song is about, how metaphorically or lyrically to take the lyrics, whether it applies to a relationship, or death, or the actual eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and it's just like two corpses talking to each other like I heard Dan Smith say in an interview once. But then I realized what this song is really about. It's about catchy, deep-voiced singing monks, emotive lead vocals, driving drums, absurdly catchy melodies, and a generally fun, upbeat song. I get the feeling this was kind of planned promotionally to be a hit after Imagine Dragons blew up, but I don't get that same commercialized, bandwagon-hopping feel from Bastille that I do from some other bands in the style that have popped up lately. American authors. And at number 7, we got Problem from Ariana Grande. My Everything in General was a pretty solid pop album for what it's worth, and songs like this are a clear example as to why. Between the sax riff, Ariana's powerhouse voice, the lyrics that tackle leaving a love-hate relationship pretty well, and the Iggy Azalea dropping a pretty decent verse, this is a rare example of a Max Martin creation that actually really works for me. And obviously I wish Big Sean's whisper chorus was a little more climactic, but it never really ruined the song for me. At number 6, we got Team by Lorde. Now, in my opinion, Lorde is one of the most refreshing artists to have this level of success in years. Pure Heroine was one of my favorite albums of last year, Royals was one of my favorite hits of last year, and this just follows suit. Sure, the lyrics do tackle topics like the glorification of luxury in media and music and all that, like with Royals, but I think the difference to me is that Team goes in a much more abstract and symbolic direction, and the production, while more pop-friendly, isn't so in a bad way, really just adding more energy to the track. In general, like I said in a Q&A earlier this year, with Lorde and I being the same age and me being an aspiring musician and songwriter myself, I find myself especially interested in whatever it is she does next, and if Yellow Flicker B is any indication, we should have nothing to worry about. Also, insert South Park joke here. You know, that'll never get old. By the way, Kanye, I've been meaning to ask you, do you like fish sticks? Anyway, at number 5, we have Don't by Ed Sheeran. This is really how I wanted him to progress after Plus. Here he uses that conversational pseudo-rap cadence to really paint a clear story of another touring musician he's with cheating on him and confronting her about it. Now, I'm not going to act like this is completely groundbreaking in any department, but it's still impressive in its own right, and as much as I hate to say it, between this and The Man, I'm starting to think Ed writes his best material when he's bitter rather than love-struck. Next up at number 4 is Paramore's Aint It Fun. Now, like with Lorde, Paramore's self-titled album was one of my top 5 of 2013, and this was definitely a highlight on that, really showing the different directions they're willing to go in since their lineup change. That funky slap bass, the bouncy keyboards, the gospel choir in the bridge, Hilly Williams being great as always, everything was just brought together in this great way to create a one-of-a-kind infectious pop song that I'm glad was Paramore's first top 10 hit. At number 3, we got One Republic's Love Runs Out. Now, normally I don't like the singles that come off these deluxe editions that come a year after the original album. They're usually just like these lazy rehashes of the singles that made the album's hits to begin with. But Love Runs Out is anything but that. It takes the little oddities within the world of pop music that help make a lot of the songs on their album Native so good, and takes them in a whole other direction. It mixes old and new sounds perfectly with the bluesy chord progression on the piano throughout, mixed with the full modern production and a great chorus that ties it all together and helps make the song just plain addictive. And while we're at it, at number 2, we got OneRepublic again with Counting Stars. Now, when I was initially making this list, I made a rule to myself that I couldn't put the same artist on here twice, but in this case, I just had to make an exception. Like with Love Runs Out, or even Ain't It Fun, the main thing that helps make this song so interesting is the influences that brings together to make something unique. Now, in the past, OneRepublic's always made pop songs that were good, but with a couple exceptions, felt a little safe. Whereas here, even though this is first and foremost a pop song, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, it's refreshing to see them having success with something that's a bit more musically interesting, again, with the song appropriately enough about not playing it safe and taking action in life. And a little touch that I didn't even notice earlier on, but in retrospect really helped me enjoy the song even more, was the fact that when it repeated the chorus twice, it did it in 2 different octaves, which is a really interesting move and something that I'm surprised people don't do more. And finally, my number 1 hit song of 2014, Come With Me Now by Congos. Now, I've been talking about eclectic songs starting for the last few or so, but in terms of that, Come With Me Now blows all others I've mentioned out of the water. Between the huge gang vocals, the absolutely anthemic chorus that I just have to scream along with at the top of my lungs whenever it comes on the radio in the car, the pounding drums, the accordion that actually really works more than you'd think it would, the rare instance of a great guitar solo in a modern hit song, it all just adds up to this invigorating hodgepodge of amazingness that I'm so glad finally broke through stateside this year, at least enough to sneak onto the year-end chart. So those are my top 10 favorite hit songs 2014. What are yours? Let me know your top 5 or 10 or whatever in the comments down below. I'll make sure to link the year-end chart in the description if you need that for reference. And like I said, this year was a bit better than I remember, so there's definitely a good amount to choose from. And just to end this video, I do want to give a little change in plans to the update I gave during the I Fight Dragons review. The Underground Corner segment is going to be delayed a little bit, but it probably should be a lot more interesting because there's a chance of maybe getting an interview with 1 or 2 of the artists involved with that, which would be really cool. But in the meantime, I'm just going to be working on these lists. You're seeing the one here now, and I'm writing the worst albums of 2014 one now as we speak, which is more disappointments than anything else. I also got favorite movies of the year, and of course favorite albums of the year, and most anticipated albums of 2015. So stick around for all of that, and hopefully I'll see you on the next episode of Spin It Reviews. Actually, guys, I'm just kidding. Number 5 is the Wiggle Wiggle Wiggle. Number 4 is the Coco. Number 3, Try Me. Number 2, the Anaconda Doesn't Never. Number 1, Wiggle 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 again, because it's just amazing, revolutionary. Bye. What am I doing with my life?